I like true crime documentary series where I can really get stuck in to a string of episodes. That is definitely the case with Mark the Killer. There are 3 seasons. Each season has, I believe, around about 10 episodes. And what makes this a little bit more unique than your average just generic, here's a bunch of killers TV series, is that each one looks at the killer's MO and how they used that, the modus operandi, to find the killers. And what I particularly like about this is a lot of the MOs are completely different to one another. So the documentary itself, each episode is the average kind of 45 minutes, an hour in length, and it takes the standard, this is what happened, these are the clues that were left behind, and now here's some interviews with detectives involved in the case, forensic psychologists, victims who survived, members of the family of those who unfortunately didn't. Very well edited, very well put together. It's pretty standard, it's what you can expect from a quality true crime documentary series. Where possible, it utilises, scenes of crime footage, and, if there's CCTV that's relevant, they'll show that. Pictures of the victims. It's a full package and it's very well rounded. But I also think the storytelling aspect is really interesting, and very, very well done. And not every true crime series gets this right, but this one I felt really did. There wasn't really an episode that felt like I wasn't there at the time, because the detectives involved in the cases will, tell us where they were when they got the call, if they remember, and what the first scene was like, the first victim, and then, how quickly things progressed, and when they realised, because obviously with the first one, even though there might be an MO, it's not really an MO if they're only doing it once. It doesn't really help you. But then it's quite interesting to see how they start to do things repeatedly as it evolves, and some of the MOs are pretty boring. That sounds really horrible. In terms of an entertainment viewing perspective, there was one who always put like a dog collar around his victims, and I'm like, well, that's interesting enough. But there was one where, I don't want to say too much, I don't want to spoil the episodes, but where they would shove something into the victim's throat, and I never understand why they do that. The method of killing somebody, fair enough. You might favour a knife or an axe or a gun, and you might shoot them in a particular place or something. That I understand, because it's, once you've done it once, you're comfortable with it. It makes sense for the killer to continue killing in the way that they know works for them. But things like leaving a calling card or, having some identifiable aspect, I never understand that, because I feel like that would make them easier to find, because if you can start to link these different murders, you've got more clues, more DNA, more potential evidence that would make it hopefully easier to find the killer. So I never understand why any of them decide to do this, unless they're taunting the police. Obviously we have things like leaving notes behind, or just making sure that the police know that they did it in a kind of, haha, you can't catch me, look, I've done it again sort of way. That I get. But for the vast majority of killers, they don't want to be caught, and they don't want to play this cat and mouse game. They just want to kill. So it is really interesting to see the lengths to which some of them will go to leave their mark. A lot of the marks themselves are very interesting, and as I said, some more than others. But it does make you think about the mentality. Not only does the mark of the killer make it more, I don't want to say easier to find them, but, it's linking the cases, and it gives it a bit more ammunition for the detectives. But it's also just interesting to think of their mentality. There are things like where they maybe take the victim's earring, or they'll take an earring, or they'll gouge out an eye. Definitely shows that there's no such thing as a blueprint for a murderer. Every killer has their own process. Everybody has their own MO if they're going to kill more than one person, and it is occasionally disturbing. But I feel like it's easy to handle. So if you're new to true crime and you're looking for a true crime series to get into, I'd say this is relatively soft. Some of the episodes are a little bit harder to handle than others if you've got a weak stomach. But ultimately, I'd say it's not the most shocking series I've ever seen, but it is fascinating. It's very interesting, forensically very aware, it's definitely something I would recommend. I watched it on Now TV, and I watched it via the Sky bit, but it's also on Hayu, and it's an Oxygen film production, so I believe it's probably on there as well, and it's also apparently on Amazon Prime. So pretty relatively easy to get hold of. Definitely something worth watching if you're interested in true crime. You can get stuck in, binge watch them. I think you'll really enjoy it.